Hi, welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher. This is a podcast where a yoga teacher talks to one of her students who happens to be a stand-up comedian and also happens to be me. Hello there. And between us we have conversations about the nature of mind, happiness, the self, all that kind of stuff. Yoga as well kind of ties it together, but you don't have to be someone that does or even likes yoga to enjoy it. We hope. That's the plan anyway. If you do like the show, we love it, I tell you, if you could share or recommend it to your like-minded friends or write us a nice review on Apple. That would be very helpful, and we love a few more listeners. I mean, you could run away and do that now if you wanted to, but if you want to listen to the show, before you do, here it is. You can think you're doing all the right things. You know, that's an illusion of control sometimes, isn't it, really? Like, if I make sure I have 5 a day, I'm never going to get ill, but...
Well, the French say 13 a day, so...
13? How do you manage that? Do you manage that?
No. Well, maybe, because remember it's serving, so if you have like a big bunch of peas with your meal, maybe that would be 2.
I always thought it was supposed to be different types of vegetables.
Oh, it doesn't necessarily have to be different types.
Oh,
and tomato sauces count as one of your 5 a day as well. Not ketchup, just clarifying that.
There's got a lot of tomatoes in it, though.
Yeah, but...
I don't know if you have ketchup, but look at the back. It's always like 130% tomatoes. You're like, how the... I want to know what this special ingredient that Heinz adds that, like, you know, breaks the laws of mathematics. But... yeah.
500% tomatoes.
And you're so, I mean, it's just, you know, it's all luck, like, as to like how long you live, really, isn't it? I mean,
oh yeah, definitely.
When you're born, they don't have like a contract that you sign, and they're like, all right, well, you're good for 50 years.
You're good for 50 years. You're gonna have some siblings.
Yeah, well,
you're gonna have.
I don't think I'd sign that.
Like, oh no, I don't want that contract. Is there any way we can take that one out?
No, I'll take 40 years and no siblings. I don't have anything against my siblings. They might be listening. So I don't know. I just don't think the world owes you anything, does it? Really?
No, definitely not.
I don't remember when my granddad died. What was he, 84, 85 or something? And he died of like asbestos-related cancer or something. And my nan was just like, oh, we don't deserve any of this. And I sort of thought, okay, it's not a very nice way to go. But it's 85 though. Like, it's not... Like
Andrew's granddad died when he was 85, and he was overweight, and obviously he had some issues, but he didn't actually die of anything. Like, in a sense, he died of old age. But I would say that in your 80s is a good long life.
Yeah,
I would have hoped.
You would take it. Like, if you were offered it early on, I think you'd take it, wouldn't you? I was just like, what did you expect? Like, did you think that you were going to be the first 2 immortal people in a couple or something? I'm not being harsh.
We'll live forever!
I'm not being harsh or anything, but like, she probably didn't mean it that way at all. But, you know, it's an inevitability. Like, it's not like, you don't deserve not to die.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with this Judeo-Christian mindset where we're sort of like, you know, we think that we're like fallen angels, basically. Like, if you believe the whole Adam and Eve story, it's like we were all supposed to live forever and live in harmony and stuff like that. And then the fall of Adam, and we're like, now we're all screwed. And
now we're all cursed or something.
Yeah. So,
and if we could just break the curse, we'd live forever.
I think so. Yeah, I think that we must have that mindset about death somewhat. Like, we're like, this should never have happened to us. None of us really deserve it. That's what it kind of feels like.
I do also feel like there's quite a strong feeling where, like, it's not necessarily about deserving, but like about like a coping mechanism. Like, you just don't think about it. If we don't think about the fact that we're going to die, and the fact that people we love are going to die, and the fact that we'll probably, you know, it's very unlikely you'll be the first person of all the people that you love to die. It's a bit like, you know, if you just don't think about it, then it's a coping mechanism, isn't it? Then you don't have to worry about it, or feel it, or be scared, or whatever it is that you would have to process when you kind of confront death as a fact. And then when it happens, it feels really, really, really shocking and bad because you've, up until then, ignored it.
Yeah.
Even though it's not going anywhere.
No, it's true. It's really hard to talk about, though. That's why there's so many euphemisms, you know, about it, like passed on and all that sort of thing. They don't explicitly say they're worm food or something. No, you don't say that, do you? But my nan used to talk about death all the time. Like, she is dead now. And people used to tell her to shut up. And she'd be saying, oh, I want this. I don't want any of you crying or anything. And people would be like, don't talk about that now. Don't talk about that now. You've got plenty left. And you're like, she's not got plenty left. You know?
That's what Andrew's granddad was like. He had the Death of John file. Everything you need to know is in the Death of John file.
He's called John, wasn't he?
Yes,
John's not some guy he murdered secretly. But, like...
No, that is his name. I always thought that was so nice. I mean, it sounds like you're saying, it sounds a bit like, oh God, don't want to, it's almost like you're going to jinx it or something by talking about it. But to be honest, having some information for your loved ones when you pass on is actually quite nice.
My nan wanted that Whitney Houston song played at a funeral, And I Will Always Love You, which I hate that song so much. I actually didn't know that it was written by Dolly Parton until a couple of years ago. And her version, to me, is just a billion times better than the Whitney Houston one. It's personal taste again, but I just find the Whitney Houston one very shrill and hard to listen to.
It was very in at the time, wasn't it? That style of singing and stuff. So
my nan wanted that at her funeral, I remember. But when she died, I was the only person that remembered it. So I didn't say anything, and they played a different song instead. And Claire was like, that's a really awful thing. Like, you should have said that, that's what she wanted. Just because you didn't want to hear the song at the funeral, it was no better because they played Westlife instead, which is as bad a song, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is, and I quite strongly believe this, that funerals are for the people that are there, not for the dead person.
Oh, good. Justifies my decision.
It depends on how much you beat yourself up about that. Do you feel guilty that you didn't tell anyone?
No.
And should you? You know what I mean? I think that's the angle that I would be more like. The funeral is for the people to say goodbye and move on and have a chat and a cry and have proper closure, and then you can let it go. That's what I
because it's not like we're going to meet her after we die and she's going to be like, you didn't get that right, or
if you do, she's going to be so angry.
I mean, that's almost like a mindset people have when they design their funeral and stuff, like that they're going to be watching afterwards going, oh, I can't believe he's read that poem out incorrectly.
She sat in the corner on one of those little trees or some pile of flowers going, he didn't play my song.
Is so-and-so on their phone?
Are they playing Candy Crush? Oh my God.
Yeah. I remember when I found out that I was going to die, I was just, I was like, I didn't sign up for this. What? This ends. I was pretty angry about it because it's just I didn't ask to be born, and now you tell me that I'm going to, It's I don't know, it's just weird, isn't it? Why, I remember someone saying to me at school once, why am I this person and not someone else in the room or someone else 500 years ago or something? Why am I me now and not? Is that a really banal observation? It's just that sort of thing like a 3-year-old would say.
No, I know what you mean.
But it is really strange though, isn't it? Why am I this person and not at this point in history now, in the present, as far as I know, unless we're living in a simulation.
Matrix.
Which apparently is a theory people take seriously. Because the idea is that if, in the future, we are able to, technology advances so much that we will be able to create a simulation of, life as it is now, it's inevitable that we will do it.
Like some sort of weird afterlife where your consciousness goes into a computer. I mean, that kind of thing, like a simulation.
It's kind of inevitable that that's going to be tried at some point if technology gets to that stage. So the argument from some philosopher or something, I forget his name, is that it's statistically almost more probable that we're living in a simulation created in the future than we are living for real in the current moment.
Oh, that's an interesting...
I look up the guy who do you know what I'm gonna do to look it up as well? I'm going to use Ecosia.
Well done.
Yeah, living in a simulation theory. Who came up with that? I'll recognise it if I see it. 50% chance apparently that we live in a simulation. According to the philosopher Nick Bostrom. That's it.
Oh, right.
Shall I send that to you or something?
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Because I did hear a podcast about it once, and So it says, it follows there's the belief that there's a significant chance that we shall one day become post-humans who run ancestor simulations.
Oh.
Unless we are currently living in a simulation or something. Okay, so, I've listened to him talk about it, and it makes a lot more sense than me talking about it. But,
that's always the way with you when we try and learn and explain anything, but yeah.
I don't even know why I started saying that. Now, I was just saying about why am I here now? So maybe I'm not even here now. Maybe this is a simulation, because if you could perfectly replicate, because we're just computers at the heart of things, aren't we? Really, you could replicate us to. I mean, unless we have. I used to sometimes think that you couldn't replicate us as computers, because at the heart of it, I always sort of thought there was some sort of unquantifiable, like a soul, like something at the bottom of me that sort of says, well, no, I am here, and you can't explain me sort of scientifically or like...
And do you not think that anymore?
Well, I don't know if I do, because I'm not sure whether, if you don't believe you're in complete control of all of your actions and you're watching them a lot of the time or just conscious of them, is that what the soul is, just like a watcher? Like, I don't know. I'm not saying, it feels like I am someone with a soul that's sort of like, you could build me in a computer and I feel like you couldn't replicate me because there's something, at the heart of me that you couldn't replicate because it's almost like your soul passing into a body or a computer or something. Like the computer's version of me wouldn't have the soul going into them. It's almost like you've got the body is the mechanics of something. Like my soul could be put into a cat or something, and it would have a different. That's how I used to kind of feel. But now I just don't. I don't know if there is a soul. The problem is when you're brought up in a religious. Not even if you're brought up necessarily religious, but I think because we live in this Western Judeo-Christian or I think any societies with any religious element to it at all does seem to believe that we have something that's a soul, and so even if you don't grow up in a religious family or surroundings, which I did anyway. I think you probably do still think that you're a unique soul and something like underneath everything screaming to get out. And that, you just, the body or something is just this vessel that you've been chained to for some time.
Well, that is that's basic Christianity, isn't it? That your body is a temple for your soul. Like that's pretty much any variation of any Bible-based religion is going to agree with that your body is a temple for your soul. So being in the West or Western civilized countries or whatever, you're going to have that feeling that, me and the rest of me is separate. So there is a separation between, like you're saying, my consciousness and my soul and what I would consider my body, and that even if you try to replicate that in like a simulator or something, you would just end up replicating actions, not soul.
Yeah. That's what I've traditionally thought, but I couldn't ever say that whether that was like actually true or not.
There is the idea that your body does have energy in it that is just that your body holds on to, not just like calories, energy and joules, but like there's energy there that's constantly moving around, and when you die, that energy goes. And some people theorize that energy could be partially be your soul. Like that's one of the things, because there is less there once you die. Not just active movement, but actual, in a sense, light or substance,
That makes me think of, have you ever... I'm not a fan of Formula 1, by the way.
Are we talking about racing?
Yeah, no, it's definitely... It's really linked. I'm just saying...
Okay, go on.
Have you seen the documentary Senna by... I forget the name of the guy, but he also did a Maradona documentary recently.
No, I don't think so.
Do you know who Ayrton Senna is?
That name does sound familiar.
He was a racing driver from Brazil in the 80s and 90s. Was probably one of the best racing drivers ever. Apparently, I don't watch racing. I think it's rather dull, actually. But because it's like, I don't know. Obviously, like they're good drivers and everything. But so much seems to be on whether your car is good or not. So
yeah. There's always a point where it's always going to be about the car.
They should all have the same car. That's what I think. But it's stupid, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. It's like I remember Ronnie O'Sullivan saying once, if someone gave him a twig and told him to compete with other snooker players out of queue, it would be stupid, wouldn't it? Like you wouldn't. Like, it wouldn't be fair at all. So Ayrton Senna died in a crash in 1994 or something.
Right.
He's quite a religious guy as well. He's Roman Catholic from Brazil. Lots of people are in Brazil, I think. It's quite a big Catholic country. And his doctor was very, very secular, but he was the first person on the scene, and he sort of said that he could sort of feel the soul moving out of Senna when he found him, which is kind of strange. And I don't know whether it's a feeling or whether he's sort of dramatised that somewhat because of the trauma of the actual event, perhaps, or something.
Of course, but
I do kind of like stuff like that because it just makes me feel like there is sort of an air of mystique to everything. It's like, I love finding out stuff like that. It's like the director Ingmar Bergman, before he died, told Max von Sydow, the actor, if there was an afterlife, he would let Max know after he died. And apparently he told him something. So, apparently Max, he wouldn't talk about it, but he said, he got some words to me somehow or something, apparently. So.
Oh my gosh, that's strange. Amazing.
He died last year, so I can't, he had a Facebook page, and I thought, could I message him and say, go on, tell us. But how did he reveal himself to you? But I mean, you don't know, that could be rubbish, because he could have just had a dream once where Bergman was in his dream, and maybe it's just you don't know, these weird things can happen to you that you think are religious events, but the mind is quite powerful as well.
And I do think because obviously when more Western countries were surrounded by Christianity and, like you're saying, in Judaism and things like that, it's basically all Bible based, which is very niche. Like, there are a lot of religions that have nothing to do with Jesus and the Bible. I know, like, the Native Americans, they have, not everyone, obviously, there were lots of different tribes, they had some really, really lovely beliefs, believing that, like, everything had a soul, and that and they basically just worship nature, which is why they never advanced in a culture like you would have met, like we had done in like Europe and stuff, because it was very destructive. It's a very destructive culture that it's not in balance with nature. Similar beliefs were in Japan as well, around about the same kind of time. Shintoism, I believe. Shinto. That's, everything has a soul, and you should live in harmony with nature. And they make shrines to the nature spirits and stuff, and have little offerings and things. But I feel a lot of the time, especially with the Native Americans and the Shinto belief, is that any sort of rituals that they do, if you want to call them that, like offerings to a tree or something, or you put some fruit at the bottom of a tree or whatever, I feel like those kind of rituals are for you, not for the thing that's going to get them. So the idea of giving is for you to practice giving, not for them to receive, if that makes sense. Like, even in Christianity, you have your tithes, and you're supposed to give to the church and give to the poor and give to another thing that you want to give to or whatever. I think there's 3 tithes, first, second, and third tithe, but each one goes to a different thing. But it's the same kind of idea. All these rituals, all these tithes, all these is for you. It's not for the person you're giving it to. It's for you to help you be a good person, and for you to be happy, and for you to find that balance. So
it's virtue signaling then, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the idea is that you're practicing that, and if you don't feel it, it's not to say that you can't keep giving, but that's the you have to find your own balance between being a hypocrite and actually giving because you want to give.
I just thought I'd just I thought I just had to say something on brand. Sorry.
No, it was good.
I used to do a joke about Native Americans that never really worked.
Is this going to be? This better not be awful.
It's not racist.
Okay, come on.
I mean, maybe the fact that you're American, you couldn't repeat it because of your ancestors' crimes. But I did a joke about that, because they had that thing about not having their photograph taken because they think it takes a piece of their soul away. So I used to do a bit where I introduce that and say that's why if you ever see a Native American driving, they're always going really slowly, because if they get caught by a speed camera, obviously they lose a bit of their soul as well as getting a...
That's actually not too bad.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It never really works that well. There's one of those things that's does okay half the time, and people would say, "Oh, I really like that," but you're like, "Well, I've got to drop it because most of the time it doesn't work." It worked really well once in a really rough gig in Scarborough, and
So random.
And I was like, how the hell has it worked here? Like, I just pulled it out.
Maybe they were all just drunk.
Maybe. But sometimes it doesn't matter what you say. They're just caught up in the whole sort of like,
yeah,
this guy is weird, and we are laughing at him. So
yeah,
but,
yeah.
So that wasn't a problematic joke. I hope. So, no.
I think that perhaps I would definitely go down that route more towards that everything basically has a soul. Because I think sometimes when we say that as humans, we have a soul, whether that's on purpose or not, we end up putting ourselves on a pedestal. So we feel like that we are better than everything else because we have this soul or whatever, or we're created in God's image, or however you want to look at it. I'm not saying that that's necessarily like you're evil for believing that, but I do think that mindset brings about a bad idea. So like, obviously, if you think you're better than everything, if you think you're superior, then you'll have less respect for other things. You're less likely to care. If something gets damaged or you squash something or you're less likely to be bothered. If you want to chop down a tree, you'll just chop it down. Just things like that, rather than actually, if you really cared about it as an individual, if you thought that tree was something special, then you're less likely to do something. You're more likely to try and take care of it than to just assume like, oh, it's got a disease, I'll just kill it. Like, don't do that to humans. So
that reminds me of, because I'm not sure we do have a soul, but that kind of reminds me of, I forget who it was. It's some philosopher. It might be Camus that said I think he's an atheist. He definitely didn't believe in. Let's say, I think he's an atheist. He definitely didn't believe in God, but it's not as simple as that, is it? But like he said that even though everything is meaningless, I mean, we should act as if there is a God, and that there is, so basically, I think he's sort of saying you should follow the moral codes that are there. But even though they're invented, we should follow them. And I almost feel like maybe from what you just said there, I feel like maybe I'm the Shinto equivalent of Camus. I'm saying I don't think anything has a soul, but we should treat it as if it does.
Yes,
that's quite good, isn't it?
There you go. I would agree with that. You don't have to actually believe it, but if you act like it, then you're going to be a better person, right?
yeah, that's good. I suppose, I think I'm kind of on board with the not. I don't so much believe in human exceptionism. I guess that's ties into that, doesn't it? Like, I mean, maybe that's it's not just a Judeo-Christian thing where like we're told we're in charge of all the animals and stuff, but I think we do assume that just because we can talk, that we like must be the only creatures that sort of feel things on some sort of emotional level. But we know that's not true because pigs and dogs and stuff are very bright.
Loads and loads of animals, like a lot of like whales and dolphins and porpoises and all of those kind of animals that are mammals as well. They have really strong family ties and groups and stuff like that. A part of me, when I was really young, when I was like a child, you read, it's in Genesis. You read like God gave the earth to man as caretakers. Man is a species, by the way, and. That's the only thing with the Bible. It calls man the species. Anyway.
We assume God's supposed to be a man, isn't he? That's what they say. But I reckon he only is because in those days you couldn't have got the Bible published if you thought it was written by a woman. Because
I like that. That's
like
good.
George Eliot and the Brontes. Sort of,
It just would have flopped.
Yeah. People wouldn't have taken it seriously. So it's just God's a pen name for some woman.
What was I saying? Oh yeah, so as a kid, and you read all the, God gave man the earth as a caretaker or whatever. But I always thought, caretaker, that means you have to take care of it. But I feel like I'm not nobody as in no individual, but like as a whole, obviously we have not done that. But I never thought I was above the animals. I never made that connection between them saying you're a caretaker, here's the earth, and then using that to say that, I must be superior to everything. I don't know if there's maybe some more subtleties specifically in the Bible, but...
Not to be down on caretakers, but most caretakers I've met, I wouldn't have said are superior to... that's mean, I shouldn't say that. But,
so mean.
I don't even mean that. I just like... In fact, I watched Manchester by the Sea last night, and he's a caretaker, and he's a well-rounded character, so there we go.
There you go. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's decent, yeah. I wouldn't put it on top on your list of films to see. He's really good in it, Casey Affleck, but it's, it's a decent film.
I mean, maybe, like I say, maybe there's more things in the Bible that I've kind of forgotten or whatever that maybe point towards humans being superior. But the first thing that I think of, and the first thing that I think a lot of people do, is around Genesis, when you've been given the earth. I'm sure the word's used as caretaker, and that doesn't necessarily mean superior. So I think that we've lost sight of that a little bit as well.
That's neoliberalism. That's what it is. I read a book recently about... So the idea that you could create a simulation of the current of everything, like if you had all the information and you could just recreate neurons and whatever in some sort of massive stupid AI computer thing, and we're potentially living through that, which sounds a bit hacked to talk about it because it is it's the Matrix. You say that, don't you, when you're like, the first time you've seen the Matrix, every sort of like, you always like, what if we're in the, it feels a bit trite now, doesn't it, to say that? It's like the sort of thing you discuss when you're smoking weed at 18 or something. What if this is all...
Yeah.
So what I was sort of saying is you could recreate everything, like, technically. If you had a soul, that would be something that you couldn't recreate in a simulation, I would have said, because it's something intangible and, something mystical that you couldn't recreate in a computer simulation, I would say. But this is going to need a lot of editing. But I was reading a book recently about how the idea that we have a soul or a self is an illusion, because it's just a story that part of your brain is kind of narrating to yourself, rather than, it's called the left hemisphere something. There's some part of located in your left hemisphere, I think, which is like I mentioned a little bit before ages ago, because it's Daniel Kahneman also talks about it in Thinking Fast and Slow, about how we have storyteller brains rather than information analytical brains. So we'll look at information and create a story out of it, and where's our place in the story, and and we don't read facts, we read stories basically. So this part of your brain is kind of narrating to you what you think about things and how you interpret the world and your place in it, with this sort of like added ego in it and stuff. And I think that is possibly what you might think a soul is. And I was reading this really interesting experiment that they did, which is probably illegal to do now, but they did some epileptic patients had some surgery or something where they split some of the connections between your left and right hemisphere of your brain. And then what they did is they showed them photographs or distressing images into just one eye. I think it's the opposite eye to part of your brain. So to bypass this left hemisphere narrator, they showed distressing images into the left eye of these epileptic patients. And so they didn't have the narrator explaining what the context of these things were. So they were showing them distressing images. And then they were saying, they were trying to explain why they felt distressed without registering that they'd seen these images. So if they were showing them distressing images of like a fire or something, they started to feel uncomfortable. And then they would say things like, you, specifically the person like doing the experiment, are making me uncomfortable, you're acting weird. But these people weren't necessarily acting weird, they just couldn't explain why they felt a certain way. So I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with this. but that's just interesting because in that person's head, that's what they've explained as the causes of their anguish at that time, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with, because it's just what this narrator says, but it's not real. So I don't know. Are we living under this spell or an illusion of this like thing in the back of in part of our brain that's trying to explain? Is that voice what we think is our real self, and our this mystical thing which I didn't think I could explain, like, is the reason why I still might have some hope that there's something other than sort of nothingness and cold science? Is that just a trick? Is that just a trick of the brain? That's what the actual soul is, rather than like something magical. Do you kind of know what I mean there?
Yeah. I suppose if, like you're saying, if you were to speak to someone who's like a scientist or really analytical, they would probably just be like, yeah, the fact that you think you have a soul is probably just your head telling you something, basically interpreting things in that way. Because it's like sometimes in yoga we talk about creating space between you and your thoughts, which is very similar. So it's like, well, what am I if I'm not my thoughts? It starts to be like kind of the next thing to wonder. But I suppose that, you could say like, oh, between you and your thoughts, but that must mean that the you part of that would be your soul, but you are still your brain. So you're just creating space between, like you're saying, that narrator and then the person in the story. So glad we got to the bottom of that. That age-old mystery solved. Yeah, that's it, solved.
Yeah.
I suppose there's that other, there's two aspects to this as well. I mean, the idea of having a soul as an individual, but then does that individual soul stay individual anyway? Even if you were to believe that you had something that made you extra special or whatever. Whether you believe that everything has it or not, doesn't really matter. If you believe that individual things have individual souls, well, what happens when they die? Do you get individual souls after, or do they join like an ether, and just there's no separation, and then it's pulled out again when one needs a soul. Like a little bit of that.
Yeah, if you believed in the soul as a narrator in your head, like telling you your concept of self, sort of thing, then that doesn't tie in with that, does it at all? So
well, it does tie in with that because that's just how it is now. But when the narrator dies, then the soul is still there. But is it an individual or does it become part of a group?
Well, the narrator is the soul, though, isn't it? Like the narrator has given you the illusion of self, and so that I thought that
I was thinking about the other way around. So, like, I was thinking it was the narrator was your mind, and right. Who the narrator would be talking to would be your soul. So maybe I misunderstood that.
Oh well, maybe I don't know. I mean, again, I wish I was an expert. Maybe that's.
Sorry, that's just how I thought of it. So then I didn't realize that we were thinking the opposite.
Who's this narrator talking to then? Yeah.
Yeah, and then that the person that they're talking to, that's the soul or something.
I don't think we definitely are going to solve this after all. It's whether one day they'll explain it all scientifically.
But I think they have explained a lot scientifically anyway. Like how the brain works and neurons and all of that and all the electrical signals and how it all works. But that doesn't tell you that you either have a soul or don't have a soul. I don't think they'll ever be able to answer that question. I don't.
Yeah, I suppose it's like, wasn't that science don't do why questions or something, isn't it? They just do how. That's what I always think. Like they explain why the Big Bang happened and stuff, or no, how it happened, but they can't explain why. Like, why did that?
Yeah, we always start milliseconds after. Yeah, everything starts milliseconds after.
But it's just like, what happened? Why did that start?
And where did that come from in the first place? And yeah. Got no answers to that, and we never will. I think that's an impossible question, unless we end or something. You know what I mean? Current theory, I think I said this before, is a flat universe, or like a ever expanding one. But if you were to think, and if we change our minds, and we have an expanding universe that blows up and then contracts back down again, so everything, gravity wins. Gravity always wins. It pulls everything in towards itself. So if you believe that there's not enough space between everything once the initial explosion and gravity pulls it all back together, we'd end up with again a singularity like we had at the Big Bang just before, or at the moment, or whatever. So if you believe in that, then I suppose there may be a chance that at some point, if we have a soul, we could watch it happen again. That's about the likelihood of ever being able to figure out what's gonna happen or what had happened.
I don't know. It's confusing. I'm going to listen back to that and think, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But, thanks. I hope that was good for you. Join us in 2 weeks' time when we come back, and there'll be another episode, and we'll be talking about the yamas again and discussing the idea of truthfulness. So, see you then, hopefully. Bye.